Captain Jake Morrison stood at attention as the massive doors of the Zephyrin throne room slid open. The sound echoed through the enormous chamber like thunder. He had been in dangerous situations before, but this was different. This was supposed to be peaceful. A diplomatic meeting between Earth and the Zephyrin Empire, the first of its kind. Jake wore his full combat armor. The dark blue metal plates covered his body from neck to boots. His helmet was tucked under his arm, as protocol demanded when meeting royalty. Behind him stood Lieutenant Amy Chen and Ambassador Richard Hayes. They were humanity's representatives today. Everything had to go perfectly. The throne room was beautiful in a cold way. Crystal pillars reached up to a ceiling so high it seemed to touch the stars themselves. Strange blue lights floated in the air without any visible source. The Zephyrins loved to show off their technology. They had been traveling through space for thousands of years while humans were still learning to make fire. At the far end of the room sat Emperor Thalnos on a throne made of what looked like liquid silver. It shifted and moved but never lost its shape. Around him stood dozens of Zephyrin nobles in flowing robes. They were tall, incredibly tall. The shortest was nearly 7 feet. But they were also thin, almost fragile-looking. Their skin was pale blue and their eyes were large and dark. They looked like they might break if you touched them too hard. Jake and his team walked forward. Their boots made soft sounds on the smooth floor. Every eye in the room was on them. The Zephyrins whispered to each other. Jake caught some of their words. His translator implant worked quickly. They were calling humans primitive, saying they needed metal suits just to survive, calling them apes who learned to use tools. Jake kept his face blank. He had heard worse. Much worse. Ambassador Hayes stopped at the proper distance from the throne and bowed. Jake and Amy did the same. It was a sign of respect, even if the Zephyrins did not seem to be giving any in return. Your Imperial Majesty, Hayes said in his diplomatic voice, we thank you for allowing us to visit your magnificent ship. Earth sends its greetings and hopes for friendship between our peoples. Emperor Thalnos nodded slowly. He seemed tired, or maybe just bored. Welcome to the Celestial Dawn, Ambassador Hayes. We have much to discuss about borders and trade routes. Before Hayes could respond, a clear young voice rang out from the side of the throne room. Father, are these really the humans? They look so small inside those metal shells. Everyone turned. A young Zephyrin female stepped forward from behind a pillar. She wore a dress that seemed to be made of starlight itself. It flowed around her as she walked. Her hair was long and silver. Her eyes sparkled with curiosity and something else. Something that looked like amusement. Princess Lyra, the Emperor said with a warning tone. This is a formal meeting. You should not be here. Oh, but Father, I simply had to see them for myself. She walked closer, circling around Jake and his team like they were animals in a zoo. We have heard so many stories about the humans. How they come from a death world, how they need machines just to breathe in normal air. She laughed, and several nobles laughed with her. I wanted to see if the stories were true. Jake remained still. He had been trained for this. Insults, mockery, disrespect, it was all part of being a soldier sometimes, especially when dealing with species that thought they were better than everyone else. Princess Lyra stopped directly in front of Jake. She was nearly a foot taller than him, even though he was over 6 feet himself. She looked down at him with a smile that was not friendly. Tell me, soldier, what is your name? Captain Jake Morrison, Your Highness, he replied in a calm voice. Captain, she repeated as if tasting the word. And do you always hide inside that armor? Are humans truly so weak that they cannot stand on their own? She reached out and tapped his chest plate with one long finger. The sound rang out in the quiet room. What are you without this metal skin? Nothing but a soft, fragile creature, I imagine. Some of the nobles laughed louder now. One called out, Perhaps we should keep them in containers like pets. Another said, I heard their planet tried to kill them every day. No wonder they need so much protection. Princess Lyra smiled wider. I propose an experiment, Father. A demonstration, if you will. She turned to face the throne. Let us see what these humans are truly made of. Let the captain remove his armor and show us what lies beneath. Then we can have a proper conversation about whether humanity deserves a place among the great civilizations. The room fell silent. All eyes moved to the Emperor. He looked at his daughter with disapproval, but also with resignation. As if this was not the first time she had done something like this. Lyra, this is most inappropriate. Is it, Father? We are considering an alliance with these people. Should we not know what they truly are? Or shall we trust the word of beings who hide behind metal and weapons? She turned back to Jake. Unless, of course, the captain is afraid to show his true self. Perhaps the armor is all that gives him courage. Jake felt Amy tense beside him. He knew she wanted to say something, to defend him. But this was not her decision to make. Ambassador Hayes leaned close and whispered, "Captain, you do not have to do this." This is insulting and dangerous, Jake thought quickly. They were here to build bridges, not walls. If he refused, it would confirm everything the princess believed. That humans were weak, that they had nothing to offer, that they were not worthy of respect. But if he accepted her challenge, he might change some minds, or at least show them that humans were not afraid. He looked directly at Princess Lyra. Her eyes were challenging him, daring him to refuse. Behind her, General Kyle Vorthun watched with interest. The military commander seemed different from the others. More serious, more calculating. "Your Highness," Jake said clearly so everyone could hear, "if it would help our peoples understand each other better, I accept your challenge. Whatever test you propose, I will face it without my armor." Princess Lyra's smile grew even wider. She had not expected him to agree so easily. "Wonderful. How very brave of you, Captain." Or perhaps very foolish, she clapped her hands together. "Then it is decided. Tomorrow we shall meet in the training arena. I will prepare 3 trials for you. Tests of strength, of combat skill, and of intelligence. We shall see what humanity is truly worth." She turned and walked away, her dress trailing behind her like a comet's tail. The nobles whispered excitedly among themselves. Emperor Thalnos sighed deeply and waved his hand. "We will discuss the details later, Ambassador. For now, my servants will show you to your quarters. Rest well. Tomorrow will be interesting." As Jake and his team were led out of the throne room, Amy leaned close to him. "Sir, are you sure about this?" Jake looked back at the throne room one last time. Princess Lyra was laughing with her friends, probably imagining how easily she would humiliate the human. She had no idea what she had just started. None of them did. "I'm sure, Amy," Jake said quietly. "Sometimes the only way to earn respect is to show them what you're made of. Tomorrow, they're going to learn something important about humans." "What's that, sir?" Jake allowed himself a small smile. "That we did not become the dominant species on Earth by being weak." The training arena was even larger than the throne room. Jake stood at the entrance and looked out at the massive space. The ceiling was so high he could barely see it. The floor was made of some kind of smooth gray material that seemed to glow slightly. Around the edges, hundreds of Zephyrin nobles sat in floating seats, all waiting to watch him fail. Princess Lyra stood in the center of the arena, wearing a different outfit today. This one was practical, designed for movement, but it still sparkled with embedded technology. Beside her stood a tall Zephyrin male in combat gear. His name was Vex Talrin, the princess's personal combat instructor. He was supposed to be the best warrior in the Zephyrin Empire. He looked at Jake the way someone might look at an insect. Jake walked forward slowly. He still wore his armor. Amy and Ambassador Hayes walked with him. The crowd murmured and pointed as they approached. More insults in the Zephyrin language. His translator caught most of them. They were betting on how quickly he would give up. Some said minutes. Others said seconds. "Ah, Captain Morrison," Princess Lyra called out with false sweetness. "I was beginning to think you would not come. That perhaps you had reconsidered my generous offer." "I gave my word, Your Highness," Jake replied simply. "How honorable." She smiled. "Then let us begin. But first, as we agreed, you must remove your armor, all of it. We Zephyrins do not use such crude equipment in our training. It would not be fair for you to have such an advantage." Jake heard Amy take a sharp breath beside him. Ambassador Hayes put a hand on his shoulder. "Captain, you can still refuse this. No one would think less of you." But Jake knew that was not true. Everyone would think less of him. Worse, they would think less of all humanity. This was bigger than him now. He had made it bigger by accepting the challenge. If he backed down, Earth's reputation would suffer. Humans would be seen as cowards and liars. "It is fine, Ambassador," Jake said. He began removing his helmet. The seals hissed as they released. Cool air touched his face. The crowd leaned forward to get a better look at his features. He continued with the rest of the armor. Each piece came off with practiced movements. Chest plate, arm guards, leg armor, boots. He removed everything until he stood in just the simple black undersuit that all soldiers wore beneath their gear. It was thin, designed to wick away sweat and regulate temperature. It showed his body's shape clearly. The murmuring in the crowd changed. It became confused, uncertain. Princess Lyra's smile faltered slightly. She had never seen a human without armor before. None of them had. Jake was not particularly large by human standards. 6 feet and 2 inches tall, about 200 pounds. But compared to the Zephyrins, he looked different. Where they were tall and thin, he was compact and muscular. His shoulders were broad. His arms showed defined muscles even at rest. His legs were thick and powerful. The Zephyrins had evolved on a low-gravity world with few predators. They had never needed physical strength. They had developed technology instead. Their bodies reflected that. They were fragile, delicate. Jake's body told a different story. It was the body of a predator, of a species that had fought and climbed and hunted to survive. "Well," Princess Lyra said, recovering her composure, "how very dense you are, Captain. Like a compact little machine." The nobles laughed nervously. "Shall we begin the first trial?" She waved her hand and the arena floor changed. Walls rose from the ground, platforms extended from the ceiling. Obstacles appeared from nowhere. It was all holographic technology, but solid enough to touch. The course was designed for Zephyrin soldiers wearing their enhancement gear. "This is our standard physical conditioning course," the princess explained. "Our soldiers completed in 15 minutes wearing full combat assistance. You will attempt it with nothing but your primitive muscles." She smiled. "Begin whenever you are ready, or admit defeat now and save yourself the embarrassment." Jake stretched his arms and rolled his shoulders. He had run obstacle courses thousands of times in training. This one looked complicated but not impossible. He approached the starting line. "I am ready," a tone sounded. Jake moved. The first obstacle was a wall smooth and 20 feet high. Zephyrins would use anti-gravity assists to float up. Jake ran at it, jumped, caught a small lip near the top, and pulled himself up using pure arm strength. He was over it in seconds. The crowd gasped. The next section required crossing a gap using swinging platforms. They were spaced for Zephyrin height and reach. Jake had to jump farther than they expected. His legs powered him across easily. Humans had evolved to run long distances, to jump over streams and fallen trees. This was nothing. A climbing section came next. Vertical ropes that twisted and turned. Jake climbed hand over hand, his grip firm and confident. His muscles burned, but he pushed through it. Pain tolerance was something humans learned early. Earth had taught them to endure. Princess Lyra watched with growing concern. Beside her, General Kael Vorthun nodded slowly, as if confirming something he had suspected. "The reports were accurate," he said quietly. "They truly are built for survival." The course continued. Balance beams that should have been impossible without stabilization technology. Jake walked across them steadily, his body adjusting automatically. Weightlifting stations where mechanical amplification was expected. Jake lifted the weights with his arms, his back, his legs. He made it look easy even though sweat ran down his face. There was a section designed to test endurance, a long corridor where the gravity increased gradually. It was meant to slow down anyone without powered assistance. Jake kept running. His breathing grew heavier, but he did not stop. Could not stop. Humans were persistence hunters. They could run prey animals to exhaustion. This was nothing compared to what his ancestors had endured. The crowd was no longer laughing. They watched in silence, their large eyes wide with surprise. Some looked frightened. They had never seen anything like this before. A being that relied entirely on its own body, with no technology to help, performing at levels they needed machines to achieve. Jake reached the final obstacle, a climbing tower with small handholds designed to be impossible without enhancement gloves. He started up. His fingers found holes that seemed too small. His toes gripped edges that appeared non-existent. He climbed the way humans had climbed mountains and cliffs for thousands of years, by refusing to fall. At the top, he slapped the completion button. A timer displayed above the arena. 12 minutes and 43 seconds. Faster than the Zephyrin average, even with all their technology. Jake climbed down and walked back to where Princess Lyra stood. He was breathing hard and sweating, but he was not exhausted. He could do it again if needed. "First trial complete, Your Highness." The princess stared at him. Her mouth opened slightly, but no words came out. The crowd was completely silent now. They had come to watch a human fail. Instead, they had watched him succeed with nothing but his natural abilities. General Kael stepped forward. Impressive, Captain Morrison. Most impressive. I have not seen such raw physical capability in many years, not since we encountered the Kronak warriors from the heavy gravity worlds. The Kronak are monsters, one noble called out nervously. Surely you do not compare this human to them, General. The Kronak are large and strong, yes, Kale replied. But they are also slow and simple. This human shows something more dangerous. He combines strength with intelligence, power with precision. He adapts and overcomes. The general turned to Jake with new respect in his eyes. Tell me, Captain, how many of your kind have such abilities? Jake wiped sweat from his forehead. Every human soldier, General. This is basic training for us. We all do this and more, the crowd erupted in whispers. Princess Lyra finally found her voice. Basic training? This is what you consider basic? Yes, Your Highness. On Earth, we start physical conditioning as children. Our world demands it. The gravity is stronger than here. The environment is harsher. We have predators, diseases, natural disasters. We evolved to survive all of it. Jake looked around at the crowd. We do not mean to seem superior. We are simply different. Our world made us this way. Vex Talrin, the combat instructor, stepped forward. His expression was serious. Princess, perhaps we should reconsider the next trial. If this is their basic level, then combat against him might be dangerous. Dangerous? Princess Lyra's pride flared. Nonsense. Continue with the second trial as planned. I want to see how this human fights. Prepare the combat simulation. But her voice lacked the same confidence as before. She had seen something today that shook her beliefs. Jake Morrison had proven that humans were not weak. Not fragile, not helpless without their machines. They were something else entirely. And she was beginning to realize that mocking them had been a terrible mistake. The arena floor shifted again. The obstacle course disappeared and was replaced by a combat simulation zone. Holographic walls created a mock battlefield with cover positions, high ground and narrow corridors. It looked like a ruined city, the kind of place where soldiers fought and died. Princess Lyra stood with her arms crossed, watching as the technicians prepared the simulation. She kept glancing at Jake as if trying to understand what she had just witnessed. How could a being with no technological enhancement perform at such levels? It did not make sense to her. Nothing in her education had prepared her for this. The second trial will test your combat abilities, Captain, she announced, her voice more controlled now. You will face Vex Talrin in a simulated battle scenario. Both of you will be given standard Zephyrin weapons. Energy rifles, shield generators, the usual equipment. The simulation will generate hostile targets that you must eliminate, while also competing against each other. She paused. First one to achieve 10 confirmed eliminations wins. Vex stepped forward. He was already wearing his combat harness, a network of thin technology that enhanced his movements and protected him with energy shields. He carried an energy rifle that hummed with power. His expression was confident. He had been the champion of the Zephyrin military games for 5 years running. No one had ever defeated him in simulation combat. A technician brought Jake a similar harness and weapon. Jake examined them carefully. The rifle was light, probably too light by human standards. It had no recoil since it fired energy beams instead of bullets. The harness was designed for a taller, thinner frame. It barely fit him. The shield generator felt delicate in his hands. Do you require instruction on the equipment? Vex asked. His tone suggested he expected Jake to fail with unfamiliar weapons. I will figure it out, Jake replied. He had trained with dozens of weapon systems from various planets. Humans made it their business to understand all forms of warfare. They had learned early that survival meant adapting to any tool, any weapon, any situation. Both combatants moved to their starting positions on opposite sides of the simulated battlefield. The crowd leaned forward in their floating seats. Princess Lyra watched intently. General Kale stood beside her, his expression thoughtful. A countdown appeared in the air. 3, 2, 1. The simulation began. Holographic enemies materialized throughout the battlefield. They looked like generic hostile aliens, the kind used in training exercises. They carried weapons and moved with basic tactical awareness, not smart enough to be truly dangerous, but good enough to test combat skills. Vex moved immediately, using his enhancement harness to speed across the terrain. His shield flickered to life around him, a blue bubble of energy that would stop most attacks. He raised his rifle and fired. A beam of yellow light struck an enemy target. It dissolved into pixels. One elimination, Jake moved differently. He stayed low, using cover naturally. His movements were smooth and economical. He raised his rifle, aimed, fired. The weapon felt strange in his hands, the lack of recoil throwing off his sense of timing. His first shot missed, the crowd murmured. See, they seem to say he is not so special after all. But Jake adjusted instantly. His second shot hit. His third. His fourth. Within 30 seconds, he had eliminated 3 targets. He was learning the weapon even as he used it. Human adaptability at work. Vex noticed this and increased his pace. He used his superior height to see over obstacles. His shield allowed him to move through dangerous areas without worry. He eliminated targets quickly and efficiently. 5 enemies down, then 6. Jake moved through the simulation like he was born for it. He used tactics that the Zephyrins had never considered. He moved between shadows, used angles of fire that seemed impossible. When his shield generator flickered and failed, probably due to the harness not fitting properly, he simply discarded it and kept fighting. The crowd gasped. Fighting without shields was considered insane. But Jake had trained for this his entire career. Human soldiers often fought without shields. Sometimes they fought without armor. Sometimes without anything but their wits and whatever weapon they could find. Earth had taught humanity that survival meant making do with what you had. 7 eliminations for Vex. 6 for Jake. The gap was closing. Then something changed. A group of enemy targets appeared between them, creating a crossfire situation. Vex handled it by increasing his shield power and firing from relative safety. But his view was limited. He could not see what was happening on Jake's side. Jake saw an opportunity. He circled around through a narrow corridor, moving fast and low. He came up on Vex's flank where the shield was weakest. Zephyrin doctrine said to always face your enemy directly, but human doctrine said to attack from unexpected angles. Jake fired. His shot hit Vex's shield from the side, causing it to flare and drain energy. Vex spun, surprised. In that moment of distraction, a simulated enemy target shot him. The simulation registered it as a hit. Vex's shield absorbed it, but at the cost of more energy. The combat instructor realized his mistake. This human was not fighting like a Zephyrin. He was fighting like something else. Something unpredictable. Jake kept moving, never staying in one place. He eliminated 2 more targets, bringing his count to 8. Vex had 7 now, but he was on the defensive. His shield was at 50% power. Jake had no shield at all, but he did not seem to need one. He simply did not get hit. The crowd watched in amazement as the human demonstrated combat skills they had never imagined. He dove, rolled, sprinted, and slid through the battlefield. His movements were aggressive and confident. When his rifle's power cell began to run low, he picked up a weapon from an eliminated target without breaking stride. 9 eliminations for Jake, 8 for Vex. Princess Lyra gripped the railing in front of her. "This cannot be happening," she whispered. "He has no enhancements. No proper training with our weapons. How is he winning?" General Kale smiled slightly. "Because, Your Highness, he has something we Zephyrins lost long ago. He has the instincts of a natural warrior. His species did not evolve in peace. They evolved in war. Every human carries that legacy in their blood." The final moments of the simulation arrived. Both fighters had 9 eliminations each. One more would win. Vex saw a target on high ground and aimed. But Jake was faster. He fired first, eliminating the target. 10 eliminations, victory. The simulation ended. The holographic battlefield faded away. Jake lowered his weapon and took a deep breath. Vex stood in stunned silence, unable to believe he had lost. The crowd erupted in chaotic noise. Some were angry, some were amazed, some were frightened. They had just watched a human without proper equipment, without enhancements, defeat their best warrior. What did this mean? What were humans truly capable of? Princess Lyra walked down to the arena floor slowly. Her face showed a mixture of emotions. Shock, confusion, and something else. Something that looked like fear mixed with respect. She stopped in front of Jake. "You fought well, Captain Morrison. Better than I expected. Better than I thought possible." She paused, choosing her words carefully. "I begin to understand why the galaxy speaks of humans with such caution. You are not like us, not like any species we have encountered. We are just trying to survive, Your Highness," Jake said simply. "The same as everyone else. Our world taught us to be strong because the weak did not live long enough to have children. It is not something we chose. It is simply what we are. Vex approached, removing his combat harness. He looked at Jake with new eyes. Captain, I have fought warriors from 20 different species. None of them have ever defeated me in simulation. You did so with equipment you had never used before. How? Jake considered the question. Because losing was not an option. When you train on Earth, we learn that second place means death. Every fight is real in our minds, even in simulation. We cannot turn that off. It is who we are. Princess Lyra shook her head slowly. I mocked you yesterday. Called you weak, said you hid behind your armor. I see now how foolish I was. You do not wear armor because you are weak. You wear it to give others a chance against you. Something like that, Jake agreed. General Kale joined them on the arena floor. Princess, perhaps we should conclude the trials here. I believe Captain Morrison has proven his point quite effectively. But before Lyra could respond, alarms began blaring throughout the ship. Red lights flashed. A voice came over the communication system in Zephyron, speaking rapidly. Jake's translator caught the words. Hostile ships detected. Weapons charging. All personnel to battle stations. The Celestial Dawn was under attack. The arena emptied quickly as Zephyrin nobles rushed toward the exits in panic. Their thin bodies moved awkwardly in their hurry. Some stumbled. Others pushed past each other without dignity. Jake recognized the chaos of people who had never faced real danger before. General Kale was shouting orders into a communication device. Princess Lyra stood frozen, her face pale with shock. She had lived her entire life in safety, protected by her father's fleet and the Empire's technology. This was her first real crisis. Jake moved to where Amy and Ambassador Hayes stood. We need to get to our ship, Amy said urgently. Now before this gets worse. But Jake was already thinking differently. He grabbed his armor pieces from where they lay on the arena floor and began putting them back on quickly. General Kale, he called out. What are we facing? The general turned, surprised that the human was still there. Captain Morrison, you should evacuate with your people. This is not your fight. That depends on who is attacking, Jake replied, sealing his chest plate into place. If they are hostile to you, they are probably hostile to us too. We are in the same space. We breathe the same air right now. That makes it our fight. Kale hesitated, then made a decision. He pulled up a holographic display from his wrist device. It showed the space around the Celestial Dawn. 3 large ships were approaching fast. Their design was aggressive, all sharp angles and heavy weapons. They are Crithian vessels. Raider class. They have been attacking shipping lanes in this sector for months. We thought they would not dare strike an Imperial flagship, but it seems we were wrong. Jake studied the display. The Crithian ships were already launching smaller craft. Boarding pods. They are coming inside. They want to capture the ship, not destroy it? Yes, Kale confirmed grimly. They will try to take the Celestial Dawn as a prize, and everyone on board as hostages. His expression darkened, including the princess. Lyra made a small sound of fear. Her hands trembled. All her earlier confidence was gone. She was just a young woman facing death for the first time. How long until your fleet arrives? Jake asked, finishing with his armor. He felt better with it on, complete, ready. 20 minutes at best, Cal replied. But the Crithians will breach our hull in 5. Our security forces are moving to defensive positions, but... He did not finish the sentence. But Jake understood. The Zephyrins were not warriors. They relied on shields and distance weapons. Close quarters combat was not their strength. Where is your armor, General? Jake asked. Being transported from my quarters? It will be here soon. You will not have time. Jake turned to Amy. Get our people. Full combat load. We are going to help. Ambassador Hayes grabbed Jake's arm. Captain, this is not wise. We are diplomats, not mercenaries. We should evacuate while we can. Sir, with respect, if the princess dies while under our observation, Earth will be blamed. If we help save her, we earn the Empire's gratitude. This is diplomacy by other means. Jake looked at Princess Lyra. She met his eyes. In them he saw her fear, but also hope. She was silently begging him not to abandon her. Hayes understood. He nodded. Go, I will coordinate with the Zephyrin command. Try not to start an interstellar incident by being too effective. Jake almost smiled at that. No promises, sir. He turned to Amy. 5 minutes. Full gear. Meet at the main corridor junction near the throne room. That is where they will try to reach the command deck. Amy ran. Jake walked to Princess Lyra. Your Highness, I need you to go to your quarters and stay there. Lock the doors. Do not open them for anyone except General Kale or your father. I do not want to hide like a coward, she said, but her voice shook. It is not cowardice to stay alive. Jake replied firmly. You are the princess. You matter. Your life has value beyond yourself. If you die, people will suffer. If you survive, you can lead them to better things. Do you understand? She looked at him for a long moment. Then she nodded. I understand. Please, Captain Morrison. Save my people. Save my ship. I will do my best, Your Highness. She turned and ran, 2 guards appearing to escort her. Jake watched her go, then turned back to Kale. General, show me your security setup. I need to know numbers, positions, and capabilities. The next few minutes passed in a blur of planning. The Celestial Dawn had 300 security personnel, but most were trained for crowd control and basic patrol duties. They had energy weapons and personal shields, but little actual combat experience. The ship's interior was large and complex with dozens of access points. The Crithians would exploit everyone. Jake's team arrived wearing full combat armor and carrying human weapons. Real weapons. Kinetic rifles that fired solid projectiles at supersonic speeds. Grenades. Close combat blades. The Zepharans stared at the arsenal with a mixture of fascination and horror. Is all that necessary? One Zepharan officer asked nervously. Yes, Jake replied simply. He checked his rifle's ammunition counter. Full load, 200 rounds, plus 4 extra magazines. Hopefully enough. He distributed his team throughout the defensive positions, placing each human soldier where they would do the most good. Then the first breach alarm sounded. The Crithians had arrived. The boarding pod smashed through the hull on Deck 7 near the cargo bay. Atmosphere rushed out into space for a moment before emergency shields sealed the breach. The pod's doors exploded outward and Crithian warriors poured out. They were big, not as tall as Zepharans but much heavier. Thick armor covered their bodies. They carried weapons that looked crude but effective, and they moved with the confidence of experienced raiders. The Zepharan security team at that location opened fire. Energy beams struck Crithian armor, scorching it but not stopping them. The Crithians raised their shields and advanced, firing back. Their weapons used plasma charges that burned through Zepharan energy shields quickly. Jake watched through the security feeds. Deck 7 is lost. Pull your people back to Deck 6 and seal the bulkheads. Slow them down. Kyle gave the orders. The Zepharans retreated in good order. But Jake could see more boarding pods hitting the ship. Deck 8, Deck 5. The cargo areas. The Crithians were coming in from multiple directions. They are trying to overwhelm us with numbers, Amy observed. Classic boarding tactics. Then we use classic defensive tactics, Jake replied. Choke points. Concentrated fire. Make them pay for every meter. He switched channels to address all his team members. Listen up. The Zepharans have never fought like this before. We are going to show them how humans defend their home. Hold your positions. Pick your targets. Remember your training. And do not let anything reach the command deck. A chorus of confirmations came back. 8 human soldiers against hundreds of Crithian raiders. Bad odds by any measure. But Jake had faced bad odds before. Every human soldier had. It was what they trained for. The first group of Crithians reached Deck 6. They moved down the corridor in a tight formation, shields overlapping. They expected energy weapons that their shields could block. They got Jake instead. He stepped out from cover and fired his rifle in controlled bursts. The kinetic rounds punched through their shields like they were not even there. Shields were designed to stop energy, not solid matter moving at high velocity. 3 Crithians went down before the others realized what was happening. The corridor erupted in chaos. The Crithians scattered looking for cover. Jake moved forward, his armor absorbing hits from their plasma weapons. He fired again, each shot precise, each shot lethal. This was what human soldiers did. What they had always done. They fought. Behind him, the Zepharan security team watched in shock. They had never seen combat like this, so direct, so violent, so effective. General Kale spoke quietly into his communicator. All units watch and learn. This is what real warriors look like. Throughout the ship, Jake's team engaged the Crithian boarding parties. Every corridor became a battlefield. Every junction became a fortress. The humans used tactics that the Crithians had never encountered. They lured raiders into ambushes. They used the ship's layout against them. They showed no mercy and gave no ground. But there were so many Crithians. For every group they stopped, 2 more breached the hull. Jake knew they could not hold forever. They needed help. They needed the Zephyrin fleet to arrive. They needed time, and time was running out. Jake reloaded his rifle as he moved through the corridor. Behind him, 2 Zephyrin security officers followed carefully. They had learned to stay close to the humans. Near them was safety. Near them was survival. Deck 4 is secure. Amy's voice came through the communication channel. But I am running low on ammunition. Down to my last magazine. Same here, another team member reported. These guys just keep coming. Jake checked his own ammunition. 40 rounds left in his current magazine. 1 spare after that, not good. They had been fighting for 15 minutes that felt like hours. The Crithians were relentless, but human determination was holding them back. Barely. An explosion shook the ship. Somewhere above them, the Crithians had breached another section. Jake pulled up his tactical display. Red indicators showed hostile forces throughout the celestial dawn. But there was one area they seemed to be pushing toward most aggressively. The royal quarters. They knew the princess was there. General Kale, Jake called out. They are going for Princess Lyra. We need to reinforce her position now. My teams are already there, Kale replied. But they are not holding well. The Crithians are using heavy weapons. Our shields cannot take much more. Jake made a decision. Amy, take command of the defensive positions. Keep them away from the command deck. I am going to the princess. Sir, you cannot go alone, Amy protested. I am not alone. I have 2 very brave Zephyrin officers with me. He looked at the 2 security personnel behind him. They were young and terrified, but they had not run. That took courage. You 2 ready to save your princess? They nodded, gripping their energy rifles tighter. Then let us go. They ran through the corridors, moving fast. The ship shuddered as more boarding pods hit the hull. Emergency lights flashed. Alarms wailed. This was what war looked like. Chaos and fear and people trying desperately to survive. They reached the royal quarters section and immediately saw the problem. 20 Crithian warriors were advancing down the main corridor. They had set up a heavy plasma cannon that was systematically destroying the Zephyrin defensive positions. Energy shields flickered and failed under the sustained fire. Bodies lay scattered, some moving, some not. General Kale was there, finally in his combat armor. He fired his rifle at the Crithians, but it did little good. His people were dying, and he could not stop it. Jake assessed the situation in seconds. The plasma cannon was the key. Take it out, and the Zephyrin shields could hold. Leave it operational, and everyone died. Simple mathematics of combat. Cover me, he told the 2 Zephyrin officers. Then he ran, not toward cover, not toward safety. Directly at the Crithian position. It was insane, suicidal. Exactly what no one expected. The Crithians hesitated, confused by the human running straight at them. That hesitation cost them. Jake fired as he ran, his shots hitting 2 Crithians before they could react. He dove behind a support pillar just as plasma fire tore through the space where he had been. The heat scorched his armor, but the metal held. Human engineering at its finest. He came out the other side, still moving, still shooting. 3 more Crithians fell. The plasma cannon swiveled toward him, but too slowly. Jake reached it first. He grabbed a grenade from his belt, armed it, and shoved it into the cannon's barrel. Then he ran again. The explosion was spectacular. The cannon detonated, taking out 4 Crithians who were too close. The remaining raiders fell back, their formation broken. General Kale and his team pressed the advantage, their energy weapons finally finding targets. Jake joined them, firing his last rounds. When his rifle clicked empty, he dropped it and drew his combat knife. A Crithian warrior charged him with a blade of his own. They met in close combat, armor against armor, strength against strength. But the Crithian had never fought a human before. He did not understand what he was facing. Jake blocked the first strike, deflected the second, and found an opening on the third. His knife punched through the joint in the Crithian's armor. The raider fell. The corridor fell silent. The last Crithian retreated, wounded and broken. The immediate threat was over. Jake stood there breathing hard. His armor was scored and damaged. His body ached from impacts and exertion, but he was alive. They were all alive. General Kale approached him slowly. Captain Morrison, that was the bravest and most foolish thing I have ever witnessed. You could have been killed, but I was not, Jake replied simply. Is the princess safe? Yes, thanks to you. As if summoned by her name, Princess Lyra emerged from her quarters. She looked at the battlefield in the corridor, at the bodies, at the destruction. At Jake, battered and bloody but still standing. Her expression was complex. Horror at the violence, gratitude for the rescue, and something else. Respect. Real, genuine respect. She walked to Jake and did something no one expected. She bowed. A deep formal bow of the kind Zephyrin royalty only gave to equals.
Captain Jake Morrison, I owe you my life.
I owe you everything. You came to help us when you had no obligation. You fought for my people as if they were your own. I will never forget this. My empire will never forget this. Before Jake could respond, new alarms sounded. But these were different. Victory alarms. The Zephyrin fleet had arrived. Through the windows, massive warships appeared, their weapons firing at the Crithian vessels. The raiders broke off their attack and fled into hyperspace. The battle was over. The celestial dawn was safe. Over the next hours, the situation stabilized. Medical teams treated the wounded. Engineers repaired the damage. The human team regrouped, tired but satisfied. They had lost no one. That was the important thing. Emperor Thalnos himself arrived on a shuttle, coming to check on his daughter and his ship. When he learned what the humans had done, he summoned Jake to the throne room. The room was different now. Not intimidating. Not cold. It felt more real. More honest. The Emperor looked at Jake for a long moment. Captain Morrison, your people saved my daughter. Saved my ship. Saved hundreds of my subjects. There are no words sufficient to express my gratitude, but I will try with actions instead. He gestured, and an aide brought forward a crystal case. Inside was a medal, a star made of precious metal that seemed to contain actual starlight. This is the Zephyrin Star of Valor. It has been awarded only 12 times in our empire's history. Never to an alien species, until now. Princess Lyra stepped forward to present it. Her hands were steady now. Her eyes were clear. She pinned the medal to Jake's armor herself. You showed me something important today, Captain. You showed me that strength without wisdom is dangerous, that technology without courage is meaningless, and that I have been a foolish child playing at being important. Your Highness, you are not foolish, Jake said gently. You are young. You are learning. That is what young people do. I was young once too. I made mistakes. Many mistakes. The important thing is that you learn from them. She smiled slightly. I have learned much today. About humans. About myself. About what it means to truly lead rather than simply rule. She looked at her father. Father, I formally request that we proceed with the alliance treaty. Not because we need human military power, though. Clearly we do. But because we need human character. Their resilience. Their refusal to surrender. These are qualities we Zephyrians have lost in our comfort and technology. Emperor Thalnos nodded. I agree. Ambassador Hayes, when you return to Earth, please inform your government that the Zephyrin Empire wishes to establish a full alliance. Military cooperation, cultural exchange, technology sharing. We have much to teach each other. Ambassador Hayes bowed. It will be my honor, Your Imperial Majesty. As the formal ceremonies continued, Jake found himself standing beside General Kale. The older warrior looked at him with approval. You fought well today, human. Like a true warrior. Not for glory, not for conquest, but to protect others. That is the highest form of combat. Thank you, General. Your people fought bravely too. They just need more training, which is why I am proposing an exchange program. Zephyrin soldiers training with human instructors, learning your methods, your tactics, your mindset. Kyle smiled slightly. I suspect it will be difficult for my people. They are not used to physical hardship. They will adapt, Jake assured him. All intelligent species can adapt. That is what makes us intelligent. Later, as the human delegation prepared to return to their ship, Princess Lyra found Jake one last time. Will I see you again, Captain Morrison? Perhaps, Your Highness. The galaxy is large, but fate has a way of bringing people together when they need to meet. I hope so. I have much more to learn from you. From all humans, she paused. I mocked you when we first met. Called you weak and primitive. I was wrong about everything. You are the strongest person I have ever encountered. Not because of your muscles or your weapons, but because of your spirit. Your refusal to give up. Your determination to protect others even at cost to yourself. That is true strength, Jake smiled. Then you have learned the most important lesson of all, Your Highness. Strength is not about how hard you can hit. It is about how much you can endure and still keep moving forward. How much you can sacrifice and still maintain your humanity. That is what Earth taught us. That is what we want to share with the galaxy. As the H,